Alexa Sand. I'm Associate Vice President of Research here at Utah State University, and really most of my brief has to do with student research programs, including our almost 45-year-old undergraduate research program. It was begun in 1975. So USU is one of the institutions nationally with the longest track record of mentoring and sponsoring undergraduate research and providing centralized support for undergraduate researchers. And I think that's something that we can all feel proud of, because it is part of what makes USU such a unique experience for our students, that opportunity to get involved right out of the gate in undergraduate research, or in research, period, basically. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about undergraduate research mentoring and what we can do to become better mentors to our students, and sort of how to cope with some of the challenges of mentoring very novice research students. I've brought together a fantastic panel of people who do this every day, who are excellent mentors in their own practice. We have Dr. Mehmet Sawyer from the Department of Sociology, Social Work, and Anthropology. He's a sociologist, works on resources. I think your book just came out too, right? Congratulations. Susie Tibbetts is a professor of interior design, and she has multiple credentials and degrees in areas of design, including graphic design. So she's really an interdisciplinary researcher in the design field, and also one of the mainstays of Research in the Arts Day, RAD, which we started a couple years ago in the College of the Arts. Ryan Burke is a professor of mechanical engineering. He's the director of the engineering undergraduate research program in the College of Engineering, and he's also last year's winner of the college-wide undergraduate research mentoring award. So those are some of the salient facts. I'll let them talk a little bit more about themselves and what they're doing with undergraduates, because I think I'm missing a lot of the really important points here. And Jamal Jared Alexander is one of our presidential doctoral research fellows. So he's a PhD student in English, technical communications, and rhetoric. And he was recently appointed as the university's first diversity fellow, or diversity assistantship fellow. So it's a graduate assistantship specifically focused on building diversity and inclusion. So he has a lot of insight on that particular point. So I want to talk just first off, though, about the why of this. Why do we do undergraduate research mentoring? We talk all the time about the benefits for students, but we don't really spend as much time considering what it means for faculty members and graduate students who do this mentoring. And we know that undergraduate research does not happen without mentors. Every event that we organize, we ask the student, who's your mentor? Because it's that partnership, that collaboration between the mentor and the student that really builds the skills and the knowledge and the practices that make for research thinking. So just a few points, just like practical points really about this. I don't know how many of you are aware, university code for faculty promotion and tenure specifically recognizes the mentoring of student research as a documentable, substantive element of your performance in the teaching category. So when people are putting together documentation for promotion or documentation for tenure and promotion, they need to be attentive to the fact that this is something that the university specifically recognizes and rewards. So documenting it in a clear and relatable way is really important. Furthermore, we recognize in faculty code co-publication and co-dissemination with students under the research heading. So if you're co-publishing with a student, that's something not to be well, and I actually did it with my student, but actually to be bragged about and to be highlighted in your record. And finally, of course, our office and your colleges recognize excellence in undergraduate research mentoring. Every college names an undergraduate research mentor of the year, and we We have a university-wide award. There are monetary benefits to those awards. And there's also, you know, your work is celebrated. We actually invite all the college undergraduate research mentors of the year to become our advisory board for the next year on undergraduate research, because we figure that these people actually know something in a practical sense about what works best. So those are all kind of like, I guess I would say, deliverables for you as a researcher, as a faculty member. Now, the other piece is a little bit more soft. It's a little less data-driven. But one of the things that actually some researchers in our own College of Education have recently discovered is that students learn best, like they get the greatest gains when they have a near-peer mentor. Like, it was a little bit frustrating for me to read that it's better to have a graduate student mentor in undergraduate than a faculty member. I was like, what? No, not that message. But it really is important, because when you're mentoring students, you're creating student mentors at the same time. So whether you're mentoring graduate students or undergraduate students, those students grow into the role of mentor themselves and begin to mentor their peers. And that takes some of the burden of advising them and directing them off of you. So that's one of the advantages, one of the sort of soft advantages to undergraduate research mentoring. Another thing is that the projects that students get involved with, because of this near-peer mentoring, often outlive their career at USU. They go on, they graduate, they go to graduate school, whatever. But they've already created some momentum around a project, and new students will take over and take that to the next step. So there's a kind of paying it forward that goes on in the undergraduate research community. And you build a network that extends from your graduated students who've gone on to graduate school down to your first semester freshman students. And you start to have a kind of an ability to step in as the faculty member, who's kind of the institutional memory of this network, to say like, hey, you know, you should talk to Susan, who graduated 2 years ago. And you begin to create, way outside your own sort of sphere of activity, these networks. So that's kind of, I think, the intangible but important benefit of mentoring. And finally, I think this is a kind of aspirational point for me. Inclusion and diversity. We have challenges here at Utah State University involving students in research who come from populations that are traditionally underrepresented in the research fields. And I'm being kind of contra this morning's speaker. I'm being kind of euphemistic about this because I want to cast as broad a net as possible. This could include people like veterans, this could include people of color, this could include economically disadvantaged students. So one of the things that undergraduate research does for us is it allows us to take these resources that USU has historically committed to undergraduate research and think about how we use them strategically to draw a wider, more diverse population of participants into undergraduate research. There are now, 20 years of data, at least, on the efficacy of having just one sustained undergraduate research experience with a faculty or graduate student mentor. That means one semester or one quarter. The impact of that on GPA, on retention to graduation, on a whole variety of factors associated with academic success. So we know that undergraduate research is an incredibly, I'm going to use the euphemism again, high impact practice, especially for students in underrepresented populations and marginalized populations. And I think that that is a really important part of our mission as a land-grant university to engage with the broader community. When we pull a student who might not otherwise have been involved in undergraduate research into one of our programs, give them that experience, give them that lift, they take that back out to their community and they spread the benefit of that opportunity way beyond any sphere of influence that we have here. So those are kind of my points I want to make about why we do this, why this is important. And now I really want to turn it over to our panelists. I already introduce them, so I guess I got my slides a little out of order. And I want to start with some questions that people submitted, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. The first is, and I'm just going to have you guys share the mic, do whatever you want. What do you think are the most important skills students should gain while working on research? Grab the mic.
All right, so I'll take it. Can everyone hear me? Okay. For me, it's more about helping students understand who they are as a human being. Reason being, a lot of times when I was in the beginning stages of research, my mentor would just sit down and talk to me in regards to trying to figure out if I had a qualitative mind or a quantitative mind. And since I like to interact with people and I engage with people naturally, it led me more towards qualitative research. Granted, I can still do both, but I think being able to help students understand who they are as a human being and or as a person will steer them in a direction to where their research is not only beneficial but important to them, while also making sure they have an interest in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you can, I have a lot of sessions where I'll sit down with students and brainstorm ideas and try and find out what they're just generally interested in, because that doesn't mean it's the same, like they don't follow my path. So try and brainstorm with them and talk about how they can frame that as research and head towards that direction.
Yeah, I guess for me, I work with engineers. I'm over in mechanical engineering, and so a lot of them, when they come to me, they've had it drilled into them that, you know, this is the problem, and you're given these numbers up front, and, you know, there's an answer in the back of the book, and you know, the answer is knowable and can be found in a finite amount of time. And so I think that the big skill I end up having to teach them is, well, no, research it's new knowledge. It's you know, you need to be you know, independent and persistent and go out there and be like, okay, well, what is the next step that I would be chasing to address my research? And so, yeah, I think that the independence and the persistence are probably what I would say are the skills.
Yeah, to me, I'm in sociology department, and our topic mostly you know, community topic, and then the first thing I try to teach my students as researchers how to think critically. So it is hard to teach, it takes time, but when you are done teaching, I mean, it is evolving process actually. When you see they start to think the community's problem from the critical perspective, and you realize that they are stating their own research hypothesis, their research problems, and basically what I am doing is guiding them, and so far I have a really great outcomes.
Great, fantastic. I think all of those answers really get to this issue of getting to know the students. In a previous session that we did on mentoring, some of you were part of this, we talked a lot about communication and how important those conversations are. So that it's really that process of sitting down and getting to know where the students are at, and then identifying, you know, this is how they can develop, this is how they can move beyond the textbook. I think that's so important. So the next question is about, it's a little bit more pragmatic. What are some of the consistent structures that you use throughout the semester to support students learning, specifically in the research area?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I use a lot of group meetings. I actually wasn't aware of the research you pitched at the beginning, so I'm glad that backs it up. But the whole peer mentoring thing. So my lab, I've got 3 PhD, 3 masters, and 15 undergrads, and so it's a lot to keep track of. We don't do one group meeting. There's just no way. So we're split into 3 or 4 groups, kind of depending on people's schedules. I try to make sure there's at least 1 PhD in each of them, and then I other than that, I try to clump together the people who have similar equipment and procedures and projects and whatnot. And yeah, we make it be, so every meeting, you know, there'll be, you know, 5 or 6 members of a group. I don't expect them to bring in-depth stuff every week. I try to rotate it, so it's 2 or 3 people's turn each week. And so, you know, if you have a really heavy exam week, you don't necessarily have to have results, you know, every single week, but when it's your turn, you can kind of plan accordingly around that. And the structure's not set in stone. You know, sometimes it'll be like, oh, I had a big result. Can I go early? And you know, we're not married to that schedule. But that sort of a structure really helps them. It also, like, it gets them to see what each other's projects are, so they're not just siloed on their own one thing, and if they need help troubleshooting with problems, then they have very obvious people that have been following along with them that can kind of help them out.
In design, we're a little bit unique because I don't think we have so much visual output, and that's what we focus a lot of our time on. And so letting the students understand how they are researchers for us and is a really big deal. So I build it into our curriculum, and I'll probably keep going lower and lower with that. But I require them to submit to the Research in the Arts Day or the symposium. And so everybody's running a project that is going to be a poster that will be discussed and that they have to present, and so that they know that that's important in our area and that it isn't all just visual things that we do and that we are researchers.
So to me, actually I got this advice from Alexa. I integrate the undergraduate student research into my syllabus actually. Since I have been teaching most of the core courses in sociology department, research method, contemporary sociological theory, social inequality, so these courses. So basically, since every semester, fall semester and spring semester, there is a student research symposium at USU. So basically, they are required to present, right? And also, they are required to write a paper proposal in some of my classes. So when I approach my students proactively, I don't wait them to approach me actually. Most of the time I approach them. Hey, I like this project, what do you think? So there is a resource at USU. I have a colleague in different universities. They don't have these opportunities. They want to do some research. University encourage them to have a research with undergraduate, but there's no money. So they can apply for grant, they can apply for travel grant or anything, right? So when you convince them, they are doing their job. So as far as I see, I have with some students every week, some students once every 2 weeks I have meetings with them, but what I'm doing is just guiding them, and they are putting the effort.
For technology rhetoric, especially for our undergraduates, we have a course that I'm actually teaching. It's called Methods in Research and Technical Communications. So I pretty much designed the course with Rebecca Walton to have students go out and work with actual clients and do real life projects. So it's more of a team-based project. And we have anywhere between weekly meetings where they're meeting with me to talk about the individual projects, as well as where they're able to do peer review with each other in regards to how to build a survey, in regards to not having leading questions and figuring out the different types of questions and how to enhance their individual surveys for their different projects. And simple things such as that. We're about to go into the interview process, and then we have a think aloud exercise. So building in different type of components to the research process and then having them meet with each other as well as with me at least twice for each project has been extremely beneficial, but it's also getting their feet wet. Granted, they aren't required to go to the research symposium, but at least they can be able to take from that course a complete report, a research project report from start to finish in regard to the literature review, figuring out where their particular project fits, how to frame or come up with a hypothesis or a research problem, and whatnot, and just going through the entire process throughout the course of the semester. Fortunately, it was exempt from the IRB, or else it would have been a little more hectic for me, but it's actually been fun, and a lot of them, since they had the option to go out and select their client, I know I have one group that's working with Sports Academy in regards to something with their Instagram page, and I have another team that's working with Cold Blue in regards to alerts, looking at the technicality and how communication is enhancing or not needs to be enhanced for communication practices. So they go out and figure out who they want to work with, what type of projects they want to work with, and it's not as if I'm telling them who to go work with A, B, and C. So that alone gets them more interested, and I figured that if they were more interested, they'd be more invested, especially over the course of a semester.
Great.
One thing I wanted to add real quick, a few of you mentioned you have them do presentations on campus. I don't make them do presentations, I encourage them, but what I've started doing recently is I try to have all of them work towards a journal paper. And so, so each of them, they've got a particular experiment that they're doing, or they're trying to measure a particular phenomenon, and if I can frame their problem around what new contribution are they making to the body of knowledge, what new thing are they going to put out into the literature, that's, I guess, another device that I've been using to kind of make sure that we're not just generating piles of unpublished results.
Right.
'Cause when I first got here, oh man, we were good at those piles of unpublished results.
Well, and that's another way in which it benefits your overall research enterprise, right? Like, you know, if they're publishing, co-publishing, I think that's really important. One of the things that comes out of all of your responses for me is how important it is to familiarize them with the cultural behaviors of research. What do researchers do? You know, they meet with their co-PIs, with the other people in their research group. They have project management skills. They present their research. They write proposals. Like, all of these things that seem so obvious to all of us because we do them professionally constantly, they weren't at one point obvious to us, and we had to learn them. Most of us probably learned them as graduate students, and I think this is an amazing thing that we offer to our undergraduates. The opportunity to learn that as an undergraduate it's sterling. It's really a great thing. So thank you all for doing that. This is kind of I almost feel like this is an agony aunt question. How much time should I spend with the students I advise? How long is too long? Meeting duration, frequency, how to work with challenging versus exceptional students. And then the next question, how to deal with students that claim they are interested and want to be involved but are routinely late or no-show. So this is getting down into the nitty-gritty. How do you manage your time? Because obviously you have research and writing and creative activity that you're doing as designers, scholars, engineers. What do you do to make this work for you?
Well, the answer to how much time is more than you have. So you kind of got to make do. Group meetings have worked really great for me because it means that I'm not necessarily repeating the same things over and over individually. We'll meet individually as needed if there's a particular individual issue. But the group meeting, it also lets me delegate stuff to the PhD students, so they get their mentoring experience, and they've also become a resource that kind of expands what I'm able to do. Yeah, challenging students, I guess. Undergraduate researchers, we pay them hourly, and if they don't put in hours, they don't get paid. And I've got enough other students doing active work that if one area slows down for a little bit, then I guess I'll just be more active in a different area. If it goes to an extreme, if it becomes a problem, then yeah, we do have to run a research lab. We do have our own research goals we need to meet. And occasionally you do need to cut bait on people, but I don't know, not very often. I think usually, it's a skill. It takes some experience to figure out how to interview the good ones. But as long as you don't just take anyone who knocks on your door, I think you can do some filtering.
It's nice if you have a formal process like that. We don't, and so we don't pay our undergraduate researchers. Everybody's just doing it because they want to. So I think it just becomes a regular student issue if they're not dedicating the time. I do this with students all the time where I kindly call them on it and put it in front of them, and they know when they're not doing what they should, and if they're not I guess coming in late or not doing the work that they have promised, they know. And so sometimes you just have to put the elephant in the room and just say it. And I don't do it in a harsh way, I just do it in a very matter of fact, you and I both know kind of what's happening here. And as soon as you do that, they'll either have that complete turnaround where they realize and they come towards you, or they realize this is not something that they want to spend their time doing, and they'll disappear. So it works for everybody, and the faster you come to it, and the more willing you are to have that uncomfortable situation, which I don't even find uncomfortable anymore. then the better off everybody is.
Actually, I very much agree with that. That's one of the downsides to the group format is I don't like to call people out in front of their peers, and so sometimes it'll be a few weeks till I get that opportunity to have that conversation. So yeah, I totally agree. It's you know, you can give them a couple second chances, but you don't want it to stretch out forever.
So for my case, so at the very first time, I am telling them what I'm expecting from my student, from my research. So my goal, I'm telling them, hey, my goal is basically preparing manuscript, starting with the proposal, and then applying URPA grant. I don't know if it's gonna be accepted or not, but never give up. So very first URPA application, we got 3 times rejection, and then the 4th times we got accepted, and then. Since I have that experience, I need never give up myself, and my students should never give up as well. So, but the problem is, they can give up, right? They can give up easily, but the motivation should be taken into account actually. Sometimes, you know, they are taking 6 courses, 5 courses, okay? I'm researching, I'm teaching as well, but it's a human factor, right? We have a coffee break in the Luke Cafe, or we have breakfast together. So I guess if you make human touch with your students, in sociology it's easy. I'm not sure about the engineering and the other department, but in sociology we are always talking about, you know, community's problem, and you know. So I guess motivation is part of that as well. It's not just checking them out. Are you done this? Are you done that? But motivation is also important.
For me, I do workshops. I typically try to do a workshop once a month, especially when you're dealing with researchers that are new to the research process. A lot of them have similar questions, so again, you can put them all in one space and address those questions, especially since I'm having projects. But also, I made it so in my syllabus to where I just set anywhere between, how many groups? I have 4 groups, so I set aside 4 hours on a particular day every other 2 weeks, so bi-weekly. And if teams need to Skype in or do a phone conference or even a face-to-face, I'll make myself available. Because at the same time, I have a life as well. You don't want to stretch yourself too thin, but at the same time, a lot of them need the hand-holding, but you want to try to get them out of that mindset to be critical thinkers and be able to analyze situations on their own. But all in all, with complicated students, I always get back to trying to understand them as a human being, trying to figure out what the issue is, whether it's something regarding a roommate, whether it's something regarding financial situations, jobs, what have you. It's always a cause to why they are acting the way they are. And I take a coaching approach to teaching. So I consider my students more of a team. So I always have them converse with each other as well as with me, because I'm not the only person that has knowledge in the room. And being able to build that network within that atmosphere, anytime one does have a personal slack or if something's happened, you'll be able to say, okay, well, these are my intention and my goals for this assignment or for this course. However, what are your goals and how can I help you in this situation, or how can I best assist you to get through this particular situation? So for me, I stress to make sure you understand the person, the students as a human being first. So that way everything else, it just kind of line up in place.
Great answers. I mean, for me, what comes out of this, again, communication is so important. Also, again, that network thing, like students are not alone. When they're working together in teams or groups, they just feel more supported, they feel more comfortable. And, you know, I come from the humanities, and in the humanities we don't really, like the model for scholarship is very much the sort of wizard in the tower, you know? But I think even my discipline and affiliated disciplines are changing to become more collaborative and to focus on that idea of like, nothing happens in a vacuum. So I think that's something that you've all built into your process, is that idea, like, I mean, in design as in visual arts, it's all about critique, right? So that idea that you're part of a community and you're speaking to each other. The other thing, though, that really came out for me is how important it is to actually have structure, to have regular meetings, to have clearly articulated expectations. Building research into the curriculum can be tough, right? Because not every student is equally skilled or interested, and so you're requiring of them something that they may not be initially passionate about. So how do you open up those opportunities for them to develop a sort of personal investment? So letting them choose the client they work with, which part of the team they're going to work on, what type of project they're going to address. I think those are really important considerations. Casey Lundstrom, who's one of our research librarians, faculty librarians here in the library, is doing a multi-year project on curricularizing research and like how you build research into the curriculum. So I urge you to go talk to her if that's something you're interested in. Plus, you can also get paid to participate in her research project. So, hey. Anyway, now I really just want to open it up to conversation and questions for the panelists and anything you all have to add or say to each other, like if I've missed some really big thing that you came here prepared to say. I just want to kind of open it up that way. Yeah.
So I have a question about like a challenge maybe you have. So it's about language and academic writing language, and it's a skill that we all learn, right, gradually. And I mostly work with international students, so that's kind of an extra kind of thing they have to learn. So I wonder if you had those kind of issues with writing. And in my courses, I sometimes give research projects to the students, but the papers I get back, they use a lot of informal and conversational language. And if I want to kind of include it in publishing, I will basically have to rewrite everything. So I wonder if that's something you emphasize or deal with, or maybe you just give them other kinds of, things to go.
I think there's a lot of editing. I've been doing more than I ever thought I would. I did not think that was going to be kind of a big part of my job. But yeah, I think, and I have had I do have students that English is not their first language. And so the writing part of that I know is always going to be more challenging. And I've got to take more drafts. And I still want them to do it. I don't want to have to rewrite the whole paper because I don't think that should be the situation. But I try and cue them to what is a little bit more professional, and sometimes that's just switching a word or saying, sometimes I just circle something and say this needs to be like rewritten, like try again, because there's no way to even start with how difficult it is.
So actually, the English is not my first language, so let me start that way. But USU has a real great resource, writing fellows. So basically, I require my students and my undergraduate students to work with writing fellows. They're awesome. So it helps a lot. It helps a lot. First draft, second draft, third draft. So basically they're polishing their paper. I'm giving feedback, but it takes a lot of time to give really detailed feedback. But after having them to go work with writing fellows and then send me a last version of the paper, that helps me as well to and for them as well. They are learning actively some grammatical mistakes or content mistakes.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on the Writing Fellows and the Writing Center programs here at USU. It's one of our most important resources for research, because when students engage in research, they're learning all of this new content, all of these new skills, and then you add writing on top of that. And we all know that students don't come to college prepared with the kind of writing skills we wish they had. So we have to direct them to the resources that exist. There's the Writing Fellows program, excellent, and that builds it into the curriculum. In fact, you're not allowed to have a Writing Fellow unless you make going to the Writing Fellow part of the grade on the assignment. So that's a really great program. There's also the Writing Center in Ravy West, and the Science and Engineering Writing Centers, which are located in those engineering's over there in the engineering building. Science is in the basement of Witso Hall. These centers really provide students with very specific support on writing in a professional way. And I should say that this is true, especially the Science Writing Center, that they call themselves a Science Writing Center. They're open to any student. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be a College of Science major. And Kendall Becker over there, who's a PhD student in biology, and I should add an NSF GRFP winner, so a very, very good writer of proposals, right? She is so committed to developing students' technical writing skills. And that, along with the research that you're doing over in technical communication, I think those are two real strengths that we have here at USU Resources. And when I say that we support undergraduate research, it's not just ERCO grants and undergraduate research fellowships and travel money. It's all these things like having a really active peer-to-peer mentoring in the Writing Center. So I just want to kind of stress how important it is that we use those resources. I mentioned the library as well, and this is another place where students get exceptional support for their research. But yeah, take advantage of the Writing Center, for sure. Sorry, I jumped in there, but I just felt like that's a really important point.
To piggyback on what everyone else was saying, it also depends on who the audience is. I know for me, I'm a very big advocate for helping students find their authentic voices, because not every voice is recognized and accepted in academic writing. At the same time, even with the students that I'm working with now, for those that have professional clients, being able to understand what is professional language, which is why I have them go through peer reviews, and another team will read all of their material, and they'll be able to have examples that I provide them of different projects that has professional language versus non-professional language, so they know what it looks like. And as they're going through this peer review process, they are able, as peers, to say, okay, you need to be, this is more street language, this is more urban talk, so how might you switch this up a little so that way it can make more sense to your client. At the same time, if your client is someone who is of, I don't know, not necessarily a professional background, just laid back, a neighbor, you may have more room for that, to use your authentic voices. But as far as trying to get it into scholarly journals, that continues to be a push. And that's some things that I'm trying to work on myself, because everyone has different backgrounds, cultural norms, and what have you, and we all speak differently. And everyone doesn't have the same access to academic resources, whether it's on undergraduate, graduate, or even on a doctoral level. So being able to just help students understand where they are and how they can, in a sense, learn code switching, turn it on and turn it off, has just been my main focus, especially since my projects are a little bit smaller. Now, when you get to trying to present, obviously it's going to be just a different level, but just to start off, they need to know the difference between professional and non-professional language, and just basic sentence structure and what have you, so that way it makes sense to the client.
You talked a lot about creating a cohort among your undergraduates, so they're peer reviewing and working with each other. One of the things I've thought about but never been able to really put something into place is how to help them be a cohort beyond when they're at USU. Do any of you have students who have left that you can still effectively network in so that your current students see that next stage of their development?
So, I was going to say, in interior design, we actually we keep in contact with everybody, and we do have a community that our students can belong to with our alumni at the same time, and we've had to do it on Facebook. It's the only thing I can think of that works. So they'll post jobs, they'll show things that they're doing. I had a student who's working at a large architectural firm in Portland who just contacted our students because he wants to take their portfolios to show other professionals and have them be reviewed, which would be an opportunity that would never happen. And he loves Utah State and wants to invest in the alumni, and so the exchanges that come from that aren't something we can create. So just having that and giving them access to communicating with each other has been enormous for our students here, and then they can see what they can do to give back when they graduate.
So to me, after having experience working with my undergraduate students, there's a concrete results that I am showing my students, especially the concrete results. I have been here, this is my third year and in sociology, and like a 3 encyclopedia entry we made with our undergraduate students, and 2 book review we published, and 1 book chapter, and lately we published one of our undergraduate students, like a 4-author, and she's the author as well, and she graduated. But you know, the publication process is revise, resubmit, right? And she finished a Department of Education bachelor program. But we published in a really good journal in our field, the Extractive Industries and Society. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, when there is a concrete result, you unintentionally continue to to see them as a colleague in the future. Because they get accepted in the graduate schools, PhD programs, or professional jobs. We have been emailing each other easily. But in a current students, they are seeing these concrete results, and they got motivated a lot in this case as well.
Yeah, well, one thing I've really been trying to do and haven't had success with yet is getting my undergrads placed into my peers' labs at other institutions. Of the undergrads I've worked with, about a third of them have stayed for grad school, and if they're interested in my field, they tend to stay with my lab. And if they go on to grad school and they're not interested in my field, then they tend to change fields and go to different universities. And then I guess like the last third is the people who don't do grad school. But yeah, oh man, starting out, I saw them as a way to kind of build my professional network that way by keeping in touch with them, and I still hope to do that. But I guess it's flattering that they like staying, that they like it enough to stick with me.
I'm feeling really envious that 2/3 of your students go to graduate school. Because
Yeah,
I think for me in my field, it's really hard to convince them that that's a worthwhile investment. You know, when you belong to one of the most mocked of all academic disciplines, you know, it can be hard. Like, yeah, go get a master's degree in art history. But in fact, we also have a little like Facebook thing going on. It's just in its infancy because we really only graduate 3 or 4 students every year. But the ones who have gotten involved in that have consistently been the ones who either found a job in a related field or went on to graduate school, or are planning to go to graduate school. And it's fun to see them talking back and forth about like GREs and, you know, how hard it is to get a gallery job that actually pays the rent and that kind of thing. But I think that, again, that idea of building a network that's larger than yourself. Like, I don't really participate in that page, I just watch it going. And social media is a weird thing, because they say that nobody's on Facebook, but everybody's on Facebook.
Yeah.
Other questions? They can be practical, or they can just be observations, too. Challenges that you've had.
I'm still trying to formulate the question, so forgive me if it takes me more than one iteration. We've talked a little bit about students that kind of just don't ever engage. They kind of fall off the face of the research plane, and so they're kind of weeded out naturally for that reason. Have any of you had students that were motivated, that did stay engaged, but just were really bad? And like, how did you deal with that? Because that's a different situation. It's not that they're not trying, it's that, you know, so what's the best way to move forward in that situation where you don't want to crush that fighting spirit that they have?
To me, whenever I had the situation, but you know, you need to readjust yourself to the situation, and then I am sure, in my case, I rethink my students' strength and also weakness, and I basically focus on her strength at that time, actually. Especially, we recently got an URCO grant. I mentor from regional campus, and my students are non-traditional students and tribal member students, and basically we sit down and talk. Actually, this is a process. I convinced her actually at first, because she didn't think, I don't think I'm gonna get an URCO grant or whatever. What are you talking about? And we talked, and then she was convinced, and then but I know the weakness and strength, so I focus on her strength to data collection actually, but try not to focus on the lit review on that part, but data collection, we went down to Fort Duchesne, and then we collected data from the tribal members with her help, and she's the gate opener for us actually altogether. So maybe focus on the strength,
I think that's a really
not the weakness.
really good insight. I mean, I had an undergraduate student researcher who was the worst writer that I've ever come across in a discipline that is really writing intensive. He was so excited about the field and so poorly prepared to excel. And for 4 years, I worked with him. He had a writing tutor at the Writing Center that he saw regularly, and his senior project, his capstone project, was really more visual than writing. He cataloged the works by visiting artists that our ceramics area have. So it's a very professional museum studies type project that he did. But oh boy, the writing was pulling teeth all the way through, and it made my head want to break. And so then he asked me for a graduate school recommendation, and I had to say, you know, this student really struggles with writing, and I'm concerned that that will be a problem. We've provided him with a lot of support as an undergraduate. He got in anyway. He went, got his MA in museum studies, and he's now one of the lead curators of an important collection, I won't say where in the state, but he got over it, or he found coping strategies. And I think it's the same thing, like his strength was his passion, his weakness was his inability, his utter inability as a writer to put like subject, verb together. I'm not even talking about object. Like, it was crazy. And yet, I think if you believe in their passion and you believe in their ability to like get over those hurdles just with a lot of help, that sometimes they'll kind of surprise you. Like, it can take a long time to undo the damage of poor preparation. But I think we have to trust that if they're that passionate, they will find a way around, under, over that obstacle. I mean, honestly, I don't know if he's a good writer now, but at least he's gainfully employed in the field that he's passionate about.
And honestly, I don't think that's that different from us either. Like, as a faculty member, you're asked to be good at a dozen different things that a real person's only going to be good at, you know, maybe 7 or 8 of. And so part of hiring students is, you know, well, maybe they've got some background or they've got some interest that can make up some of my weaknesses. Or maybe there are some things that you learn to lean on your colleagues, and so maybe you can coach them to lean on their colleagues. And there are some things that maybe you just accept you'll be bad at, and it feels bad every time, but you'll just focus on your strengths. And so, but yeah, I mean, they're researchers, they're your peers, they're your junior peers, they're your peers. Right.
Another way to add to that is another reason why I do group projects, why you have, I think you would have at least 3 to 4 people in every group. So at the very beginning of the semester, I have them read, I forgot the name of the book, which is sad because I selected it. However, it talks about teamwork and figuring out how to interview each other to figure out what your strengths are. And being able to identify that at the very beginning, before you even start the research process. I am good at talking to people, or I am good at writing in this case, or I am good at being able to calculate or put data together to tell a story from whatever data set that we are able to do, and being able to assign those different tasks of a research process to different team members can come up with ideally the perfect research project. So being able to help them figure out what role to take in their own team is something that they have to figure out. I'm just there to help moderate. Has been beneficial, but at the same time, if you have something that's a weakness, to say if writing is a weakness, you can learn from the person that's in your group in regards to how they structure these sentences or how they put this particular literature review together and connect it to one piece of literature and connect it to another piece and what have you. So a lot of it is, again, them being able to learn from each other's experience and as well as their own individual strengths.
The thing that I've been thinking about is incremental gains with each student. And like, I had a student that I worked with on an URCO grant, and it was so easy she wrote well, everything was easy. And when you mentor a student like that, you know you don't really have to do very much. And it's,
You don't want to let me go.
yeah, and you say, yeah, please stick around. And of course they go to graduate school, they go and do all those things that you can see as their path. But it's this, I don't think you realize when you start teaching that you're going to be spending your time not with the most talented, creative, best writers, you're actually spending your time with the students who struggle. And so when you prepare for that and you know that the whole game is incremental gains, because those other students, you're just leading and guiding and they already know their trajectory. You're trying to kind of light a fire with the others. And so even if they're really, really passionate about it, again, you take that as their strength and you say, okay, I'm your cheerleader. Here's how I'm going to make this doable for you, and try and help break it down. But they're not going to probably meet the level of that other student because the other is a little bit more natural, but they can still make a gain. And I think that's the most important thing, is that they just achieve something.
Other questions? Topics? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, what's the way or approach you attract students? For me, basically, I'm not teaching a low-level class, right? Mainly the student approach to me because they're interested in my research. But in that sense, you see, only have a few undergrad students working with me. Not like in your group, you have tons of students working with you. So what's the best approach, to approach the students, get them involved in your research?
I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all. So I teach a junior class, and my lab skews more towards juniors and seniors because I tend to recruit at that point. But I mean, the URF program is fantastic. It's a way you can get a freshman into your lab, and especially interdisciplinary stuff. So I do a lot of camera-based measurements, and at no point in mechanical engineering is someone going to tell them how to use a camera. And so whether it's a freshman, whether it's a senior, it doesn't matter. The classes don't matter. And so interdisciplinary stuff is great. You get someone really young because it teaches them some ambition, but it also you keep them for 3 or 4 years. You don't have to train someone new next year, right? So some of it is just how do you tailor different projects to the interests and backgrounds of the different students. I also think having a strong web presence helps. If you have a really good website so that they can find you, that helps. I keep an ad open on Aggie Handshake, and so instead of just saying, oh, I'm hiring for this one position, I'm going to let the position expire, I just keep extending it, and people keep applying to that. And so occasionally I found really good people that way, just digging back through recent resumes. It's like, oh, this person applied 3 weeks ago. Let me see if they're still interested.
Right, and a couple of times recently, Ryan's used our Find a Student feature on our website, on the Undergraduate Research website. So under the tab for mentors, there's Find a Student, and you just fill out, this is the project I'm doing, I'm looking for this kind of student or somebody who's interested in these things. Marvel universe and physics. And did you get good response on that, or just one?
I used it twice, and I got one for each, and I really like both of them. They're fantastic freshmen. They're in the URF program. It's a little scary. You lose a little control over your recruiting that way. You're kind of relying on Alexa's office to play matchmaker for you, but I like both the ones she matched me up with. So.
And then you have a crochet project.
Yeah, we were looking at the way that force distributes through knitted fabric, and the idea is, well, knits are a lot stretchier than weaves, and so people use woven composites in aerospace, but if it's stretchier, then maybe it can resist impact better, and so I was looking for, they don't have to be an engineer. It turned out this one was, but yeah, if you've got some knitting background and this sounded cool, then so I guess that's the other thing about undergrad research is I don't have to have a 6-figure NSF grant to do this stuff. I can just have an idea and pay for it on the pocket change off the other projects and say, yeah, let's put an undergrad on this. Let's see what we can come up with.
Great. Well, looks like we're kind of running out of time. There's definitely a lot of sweets and coffee left, so please avail yourself of that. And I'm always available to answer questions about the programs in our office, but now you know who some of the faces are in sort of undergraduate research, movers and shakers on campus. I think you can I'm inviting them on your behalf, reach out to any of them and ask, more specific questions to the fields that you're in where there's relevance for you. But I mean, any further questions that you have, please feel free to get in touch with me or with any of these guys, or just fill out find a student request and see who we match you up with. We have tons of freshman and sophomore students who are really interested in research, but they don't quite know what they want to do yet. So we're always throwing those opportunities out there at them and seeing what we catch. It's pretty fun. Yeah. So thank you all for coming, and thank you to the panelists.